Another picture of the big block hauling it out there. Unfortunately, right after this picture, the next block, the chain right there pulled poor Wesley's thumb off. Literally, they did sew it back off, but they were lifting the block. That's one of the big problems when dealing with really, really heavy blocks of matrix, is you're dealing with massive weights. And unfortunately, Wesley had a bit of a problem. He's still prepping fossils, just waiting for the thumb to heal over when they put it back on. And moving it out of there. And they bring it with the front end. We then load it onto relatively large trucks. Because we've got big, even-sized pieces, they'll load them on the back of the semis and bring it to different labs. Unusual thing, about 10 years ago, some of the biggest dinosaur prep labs, they had been outsourced by the museums. Very few big museums have dino prep labs. They've been outsourced to about 5 different labs in the US. All 5 of those labs were basically going to be shutting down because funding and whatever, they weren't prepping as much material. Literally, the Dana Quarry has kept those 5 prep labs all over the United States in business based on these skeletons that are coming out of there. And this is one of the blocks that they actually pulled up 2 summers ago. It is, you'll see the pelvic bone, you've got the vertebrae. That block in the matrix, you could just see the edge of this run into the lab, and this was done up in Pennsylvania at one of the labs, and they've got it down. This is the first level as we're working our way down through the plaster jacket. It's another one where we're taking some of the larger bones. Just kind of neat to see the size of the bone compared to the staff working on it. We're dealing with some really big bones in there. One of the leg bones that we dug up last summer was just shy of 7 feet long, and it was just one big leg, massive, massive leg bone. So as we're pulling a lot of this stuff out of the matrix there. And this is what we end up with. Obviously, the full skeleton. This particular specimen is named Einstein. Einstein was named that because it was the first sauropod found with a complete brain cavity intact. It wasn't crushed, it wasn't flattened, it wasn't partial, it was a skeleton. This particular skeleton was 92% complete. Unusual thing about it is, this is also the one they're using as the cover of that article being published. Like I said earlier, the unusual thing about the paper is it's being published online, being published directly on the website. It's not, you don't have to be a member of that magazine, you don't have to be a member of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontologists. Any individual, anyone in the world can literally go to this website and download this paper. And this paper, which is naming the new species, Amphocoelus brontodiplodocus. Basically, when you look at the paper, what they have done is they have now said Diplodocus, Apatosaurus, and Barosaurus, are 3 very famous sauropods, are all the same animal. They're just different sizes. And he's basing it upon the fact that all 3 of those species, their type specimens were less than 27%. That's the most of any of those 3, were 27% complete. So we're talking very small amount of material from a skeleton, and they named the species based on it. He's looking at specimens that are complete. What we believe, the reason those specimens are there in that particular site and in such complete shape is that it was a watering hole. The evidence looks like it was a watering hole where the large sauropod group would go down, get trapped in that watering hole as it's drying up. The predatory dinosaurs would come in. We've gotten, I think, 9 species of predatory dinosaur teeth or skeletons out of the locality. And they would feed upon them, but they wouldn't move them because it was going down into the hole. They weren't pulling any of the bones out of it. So for the first time ever, not only do we have babies, juveniles, females, males, we've got multiples of each one, and the skeletons are complete, which again is something really, really significant with dinosaurs to find a complete skeleton. But based upon that, when you start looking at all of the features of these 3 dinosaurs, it really does appear that they're the same animal. That they're not, it's just you're looking at a male, heavy-bodied neck vertebrae. Apatosaurus is one of the ways we decided Apatosaurus because their neck vertebrae are so thick. Well, males of many animals have thicker bodies. Females, similar features, thinner neck vertebrae and a shorter tail. Again, male-female differentiation. And then when you look at the juveniles, that specimen Twinkie, And they also have another one from this summer. We found an even smaller one that's 21 feet long, but it's a complete skeleton. Definitely looks like it's the same animal, but it's the one that was Barosaurus, that they named as based upon a small amount of bones. And when you look at the whole skeleton, the unusual thing about this is, like I said earlier, number one is this is a paper being written by a commercial fossil dealer. Generally not acceptable. It's being self-published. Again, not something that's normally done. And thirdly, it is being given to anybody. Anybody can read this paper. It's not one to be that member. And that's really, it is upsetting some of the dinosaur paleontologists. Other ones are looking at it as, wow, look at all this material we now have to deal with and to get a better view of. So it is causing some waves, because if this is a new way of doing it, somebody sitting in the room could find something significant and publish a paper based upon, without necessarily going through some process. Even the authors of the paper do mention that there are some potential problems with this. If you're like dinosaurs at all, this is a paper I would recommend to go on their website and download, because of the fact is it does look at a lot of details that we've never had before. We've never had groups of dinosaurs that are of sauropods, of the different ages, that are from the exact same locality. That's not something we found before. It does look at some information that we know about the particular site. The great thing about the Dana quarry, we're also finding a lot of material around the dinosaurs, plant material, small mammals, other small animals all around that site, that they're getting a better picture of really what they're dealing with. The one thing we're not finding at all at this site is we're finding absolutely no fish material and absolutely no crocodilian, which again, if it was a pond or a lake or a stream, generally we do find that material mixed in with the dinosaurs. So with this particular site, with the fact that none of that is present, there's found one partial turtle skeleton that they summarize may have wandered in on its own, but that's literally the only thing we found in the about 8 years that they've been digging in this area. That makes us think that it is a watering hole similar to what you would see in Africa, and it was during a drought that you got a lot of the material down in there. Now, just to show you something else about the site. The main site, like I said, is 200 yards wide. There's skeletons everywhere. Every time we finish one, they have to be careful because they're usually bumping into a second and third skeleton. So you're trying to pull one piece up and not bang into another one. But all around the hills, every little hill around this site is filled with all these little bones. These are dinosaur bones literally washing out of the hills. Everywhere you look. This little cavity here, it was a section of rock that had caved in. There's a pile of dinosaur bones that just fell right out of it. It is everywhere. From looking at this and from doing some surveying, they believe this particular locality may actually stretch for 3 miles outside of where it is in Wyoming. The one side of it is actually on BLM land, and we're hoping that the American Museum of Natural History is going to start working that site again, because we believe the skeletons over on the other side are complete. On the other side of the quarry is a really big alfalfa field that the rancher owns. Every time he runs the tractor through it, you just see bits of bone flying everywhere. It kills you every time you watch him run it through there. But they believe that entire field is sitting, it's about a half a mile wide, and it's sitting on top of more of the same layer. It's just a layer full of this material. While we were there this summer on this hill, they had found some bones sticking out. We found some fragmentary teeth material. They started digging around it. They haven't opened up this site, but the evidence we've got so far is that there's an Allosaurus skeleton literally sticking out of the side of the bank of this rock, all the rock material coming out of it. The one thing about the quarry is we did also find a specimen named Dracula, which is the most complete Allosaurus skeleton also ever found from that time period. So the material is everywhere around it. And it's something that literally, they hunt this for the next 50 years. They will not finish being able to pull the skeleton. There's so much skeleton material coming out of this one particular locality. So it's a nice, rich locality. It's a locality that's going to bring new things on a regular basis. The fact that we now know the accurate size of a sauropod brain. I'm not really sure why that's super important, but that was a big deal when we finally found that full brain cavity. We now know a lot more about the tail structure, the foot structure, the way that lots of parts of the body are put together. The one unusual thing that just from the very second skeleton that came out of here is they realized, and some of you may have seen it was published a few years ago, that Diplodocus, one of the dinosaurs, a very well-known sauropod, did not have the ability to raise its neck up at all. The neck vertebrae were crossed together. The head had to be kept straight. They believed there was a lot of movement side to side, but raising the neck, this animal didn't have it. That caused a little bit of problems. One is two of the best skeletons of Diplodocus, one in Houston and one out in, I believe, in New York. Both of those heads are straight up in the air and looking out. The neck vertebrae couldn't do that. When questioned about that, both facilities didn't have any neck vertebrae. They had to fabricate the neck. That wasn't part of the skeleton they had. Now we have it. We know for a fact the neck's got to be straight out there with that specimen. So. Now the last thing I want to talk about real quickly is a little bit different. Obviously we all love to find the fossils, but right here in Tampa and back over my zoo in Brevard, we're going to be having the animatronic dinosaurs, which are the robotic versions we bring back to life. It's kind of a neat way. This company that I work with that actually does this, we work with them specifically trying to base the new finds on the new robotics are based on those finds. The dinosaurs, they're actually changing the name of their Apatosaurus specimen Diplodocus to the new Amphicoelus name. They're also redoing the structure on some of their specimens, and a lot of those are going to be on display. The great thing about this also is the Brevard Zoo, we're having it February 2012. This summer, we are taking a group of zoo members out to Wyoming, and we're going to be collecting dinosaur material out in a different locality and bringing that material back to the zoo, putting it on display, and then prepping it. We're bringing in some dinosaur prep people, and we're going to be teaching our volunteers how to prep up dinosaur material and then putting it on display when we've got the robotics to try to make that connection between some of the historical finds and some of our modern version of it, all the way around that way.